Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hi. I'm going to use the mic even though we're an intimate group. Is that okay, Ray? You're going to turn it up? Okay. Is that okay? We're testing out the speaker in the space because galleries are very echoey, right, Michael? So we like to have a little mic, a little amplification. I'm Sarah Russin. I'm the Executive Director of Blaze. I know many of you. Thanks for coming. There are a few people who've come from Northern California, San Diego, Southwest. Just quickly about Blaze. This is not our building. I wish it was, but it's not ours. This is the LA Municipal Art Gallery, which is run by the City of Los Angeles. It's been around for a long time. And we came here to do this partnership because our art gallery is currently under renovation, and we'll be back there in about a year or so. In the meantime, we're really happy. This is Hugo Cervantes, who's the full-time curator here at Blvd, and he's been our connector to get things done here. It's been really awesome. Just a few words about Blaze. We call ourselves the longest-running artist space in LA. So we started in 1978, and it was started by artists like Harry Gamboa and Gron and Roberto Montes. There were Latinx artists from the CETA program. You want to get super nerdy, we can talk a little later about what that is. And then also a bunch of artists at Otis that graduated from Otis, and 13 original members. And it started in downtown LA, and it sort of did morph into, a full nonprofit with like a team that wasn't all volunteer artists. So we've been in Hollywood since the early 90s, and we will have a renovated gallery soon. So we do experimental projects. This project with Beatriz da Costa is part of Pacific Standard Time. And I don't know if you're all familiar with that. There's a little booklet out front with all of the shows. There are 70 exhibitions that the Getty has funded, a research phase and an implementation phase. And this is the third time Lace has done a show. We're one of the smaller organizations that's funded for this project, so we're really honored to be included. Daniela used to be our full-time curator. For 6 years we worked together, and we came up with this artist. She was supposed to do a show at Lace many years ago, and honestly, when we got the art and science theme, we weren't that excited about it. I wasn't that excited about it. I was like, oh, what are we going to do? And then we came up with Beatriz da Costa, and she's just sort of like the perfect person that fits the theme, but also fits the ethos of Lace, our history of performance art and experimental projects and activism. So I'm really proud of the show and the team that put it together. And we have, this is Juan Silveria, who installed almost this entire show and oversaw it as our assistant director of programming. And Camille is outside, our communications person. She's drawing with kids, I think, right now. And I'm going to introduce Selene Preciado, who's our full-time curator at Lace now, in-house curator. And we have lots of projects we're working on. We're programming into like 2029 already, 2030 even. The next PST is going to be 2030. This is Camille. I introduced you, you were here. And Selene is going to be the moderator today to talk with our three panelists, and she'll introduce them. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This is working. Thank you so much for coming from faraway places to be with us on this beautiful Saturday. So thank you so much, and thank you to the panelists that work really closely on the project. And like Sarah mentioned, Daniela is currently the chief curator and director of programming at Red Cat, but she was at Blaze for 6 years as a chief curator and director of programming. And she works between Los Angeles and Mexico, emphasizing contemporary art and curatorial practices that explore the politics and social issues of every day. And she's the curator of our PC show. Curatorial assistant, Ana Briz, is a researcher, writer, and curator in LA. Her research is situated in the field of performance art and visual culture in the United States, with an emphasis on queer, feminist, and anti-racist work by BIPOC and of displacement, gentrification, mourning, and resistance in contemporary art and culture. And then we also have Andrew McNeely. Thank you so much for being with us. He's a writer, editor, curator, and curatorial advisor to disciplinary tactics. Andrew was part of the research since the beginning. And he's curating practice focused on aesthetics, the philosophy of race, and spatial and environmental politics. And since 2018, he has started the Community Reading Group, a collective that is dedicated to verbalizing the limits of community and the duties of common life. And we are here to talk about mostly the publication and the exhibition. Also want to say that the publication is available for purchase in the back in the study room that is part of the exhibition. We have Skylight Books selling the book today, so please check it out. And we also have it here in the front, and if you want to sort of peruse and see how beautiful the publication is, we're very proud of the book. And yeah, the three people that are here worked really hard on putting it together. And yeah, the book, I think, the book and the exhibition are mirrors of Beatriz's practice in a lot of ways. Her practice is very much based on collectivity, on collective learning and being together. There's a lot of concepts that you'll see throughout the exhibition and the publication that are about citizen science and collective research, collective learning. So there are a lot of connections to their practice, and it's one of the things that I find the most interesting about the show. Also, Daniela herself curates that way, so I think that was kind of like the perfect match. And so I would like for Daniela to talk a little bit about the process of the research and the study groups, especially in connection to Andrew as a curatorial advisor and putting them together. And then after you sort of introduce maybe Andrew and Ana, can talk to us a little bit about how the study groups inform the exhibition and the publication.
Hi everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, thank you. Just want to say, echo that I'm so happy to be here sharing the process of this book that took us 5 years. And same with the research. It was a great opportunity through the PhD and jumping into your question about the process of research and curating. When and Sarah and I decided to propose to the PhD this project of Beatriz da Costa, I was very interested in looking into her practice as collaborative. If you see the show, or if you're going to see the show, she was very involved in doing collectives, but also collaborating with critical art ensemble, her own collective preemptive media, but also she has pieces like Pigeon Blog that is behind us, where she include her students. So she was continuously collaborating with animals, with microorganisms, with plants, in this wave of interspecies. So when I started planning the research, I was like, oh my gosh, I need advisory committee. And of course, I went first to talk with Robert Neidefer, who is the widower, but also a very close artist and collaborator of Beatriz, who also owns the state, and he's working with Cornell University to bring her archive into the library. And so I spoke with him, then I spoke with Kavita Philip, who co-edited the book Tactical Biopolitics. And Tactical Biopolitics for me was a very important book in terms of interdisciplinary ways of working and really creating a network of scientists, theorists, artists, and academics, and bring them all together in one book. That's the work that Beatriz da Costa and Kavita Philip did. Kavita Philip is a historian, So speaking with her, because that book is actually the one that really makes me wanted to do this show, and I really read that book as a whole from Beatriz and Kavita of like, we need to, to create, they wanted to create a movement that was connected with tactical media movement, that it was connected with interdisciplinary forms and methodologies, and also with social movements. So in that sense, I feel very connected because my practice and my curatorial practice is really connected with social movements and collaborations. So I knew Andrew, sorry, like a long story, but I knew Andrew and I knew his study group that was happening at LACA. He will tell us more. So I created first advisory committee with people that knew her personally and also collaborate with her. And then also I bring a team, including Ana Briz as our curatorial assistant, Andrew and Leslie Garcia, who is an artist from Mexico, who help us to reinterpret all the technology with Beatriz. So it was a really bringing like the different people that she collaborate, but also the people that I have been collaborating and that have been creating networks to produce critical knowledge and distribute. So we have, so I contact Andrew to do a type of a study group because I knew that I didn't want to only do the research by myself. I wanted to do the research together with people that come from different disciplines. I'll leave it there, so maybe you want to jump into that?
Yeah, sure. For those of you who didn't know me prior to coming, I'm a curator. As Daniela said, I also, I also run a permanent seminar called the Community Reading Group. It is, for lack of it's simply it's a book club, but what it is for me is it's more of a spiritual practice and part of my intellectual production, which is engaging with members of various communities in like deep textual analysis of different books, whether they be philosophy, history, or law, or it could even be children's books, for example. Looking at the way that simple terms in political language are invoked and mobilized in conversations or in political action. So, for example, the word community, how that term is mobilized in conversations of collectivity or trying to galvanize people toward a common cause. And so Daniela, knowing I had engaged in that work, invited me to help her and Anna develop a study group which brought that kind of methodology to bear on Beatriz's writings, but also the writings of her contemporaries and people she was in conversation with. So, the study group, for the first phase of it, really was a close sort of analysis of everything that Beatriz had ever written, and looking at how certain keywords in her thinking began to evolve in the course of her practice. I think the one that is the most important, I believe, to her work is the question of the public, which really forcefully takes center stage in the way that she articulates the value of her work earlier in her career, but then begins to shape and broaden and become more complex, and also, interestingly, a little more subtle toward the end of her life. And it also informed my essay, which I wrote for the book, which we can talk a little bit about later when we get to that. But,
Maybe I'll follow up, or everyone to also do a follow-up question, but maybe Anna can talk about a little, because of all the people that were involved, and again, I kind of want to always bring us back to this idea about, the multiple voices that were part of the research, kind of being an echo or a mirror of Beatriz's own practice, and how she worked with collectives, she always collaborated, and the public was part of it. But it's interesting to me, and also because I watched the videos of the study groups and the topics with Gavita, how the different viewpoints take the research in different directions, especially when some of them were very close to her. I mean, her personally were friends and were in relationships with her, like how that informed, but also like take the research in different ways.
Thank you, Selene. That's such a great question. I think I have two answers. To start, I'll say that often people ask about the research for the project and how maybe difficult it was to do a show about an artist who's deceased and working with her estate, etc., right? And I often say that we were very fortunate because a lot of her collaborators, all of them, everybody that we spoke with, our advisory group that was comprised of collaborators, friends, family, they were also generous with us, sharing different aspects of her practice, of her life. So we got to see in kind of a refracted way a myriad of Beatrices, of different ways that she existed in the world, her different personalities, her different interests. And in that sense, we're very fortunate. We got to know her very well through our research and through our collaborators and our advisors. In the study group, it was really interesting because we intentionally wanted it to be very interdisciplinary or undisciplinary. And a lot of our participants and collaborators were pushing us to think about things in different ways. I do remember conversations with maybe dancers or performance artists thinking constantly about embodiment, which is something that we weren't thinking of, I think, in the very beginning. We were very concerned with kind of the theories that revolved around her work, whether it was in biopolitics, very Foucauldian type of theories around politics and society, or the public, or the history of tactical media and DIY technoscience, and then going into all the smaller kind of aspects of her work, whether it was interspecies collaboration or microbes and microbiology. And so having people kind of reflect back to you within their own perspective, their own personal interests, is a challenge to rethink curatorially how you intend to present something and think about and consider really different aspects of the work as well. So in that sense, we're also very fortunate to be able to have that platform or that space to bounce ideas back and forth. And they definitely, from those beginning stages to the completion of the work, the project, have been present in every sense, influencing the way that we make decisions, I would say.
I think this is a really good question because every collaborator pointed out different directions. So, but something that we did during the research was like interviewing, I don't know how many people we interviewed, more than 30. And at the beginning, you have 1 hour on Zoom with this person. And then at the beginning, we were just jumping right into trying to get to know Beatriz. And we just realized, of course, we knew it and we wanted to be very careful because she's a person that died very young and it was very painful for many people. So we realized that we needed to access to that knowledge in a different way. So we come up with a question first, would be like, we will talk about the project and present our intentions to people that has been working very close to her. And our first question was like, could you share with us any anecdote or one of your first memories when you met her? And that was like kind of like the breaking the icebreaker, because it was hard, and you can see how hard it was for people to remember. Some people were, we are people, so we have different ways to address our emotions. So that was very important for us, and I think like every person also, apart from giving us all the knowledge and how was the relationship with her. They will give us very personal details that didn't feel that we were passing her privacy. It was more integrated in her practice. So that was very important. I would just say some examples. Christian Paul, curator at the Whitney, when we were talking with her, she really emphasized that we should look into the artworks that she never don't finish artworks. So we look into her archive, and of course she was super organized and has like this whole package of like tons of projects that she submitted to the Guggenheim, to like, all these kind of grants. I think that was important for us to include the labor of the artists, and that was like what Christian Paul was really pushing to. She was like, this is also the practice of an artist. Like, it's not only proposals on paper. And actually, there's a proposal that she did for Lace, and addressed it to Robert Crouch, who was in that time, and he was trying to do this exhibition with her. And those materials were also crucial for understanding her practice. So that was one of them. The other one was Kavita, who will bring us the concept of misappropriation. And she was really encouraging us to not just, the show. We wanted to connect it with the present, so we wanted to update the technology. And she was really encouraging us about like, you can interpret this project in this contemporary moment freely. Beatriz will be happy to do that instead just like make it exactly as how she did it. So that's why we invited another artist to reinterpret Preciado.
Can you, and maybe it's a question for whoever wants to answer one, to talk about the concept of undisciplinarity, and explain the term, but also in connection to the practice and bringing it back. Like I'm really interested in this, I don't know, like the tensions or the territory of the personal and the private versus the art practice, and which in Beatriz is kind of one thing, because a lot of her work is also about her own life, and also because this is a work that is supposed to reflect her practice, but also looking into the future because of the reinterpretations, which to me is also really interesting. It's not a retrospective, and they're not recreations or like the re-performances, but everything is sort of like with a modern lens with still remaining or respecting the original work. So maybe Andrew, do you want to start?
I think we can all try to define undisciplinarity.
Yeah. I have to admit, this critical misappropriation is not my language. I think there's multiple ways in which you could define that term. There is certainly the Foucaultian way of thinking about the way that we're disciplined by technology and society. And then there's the aspect of not having a specific, if you think about like a university discipline, like a scientific discipline, having a certain myopia with how you approach a topic. I think in the case of Beatriz, it very much is, of course it's both those things. I think what supersedes both of them is this interest in approaching issues as great a multidimensional lens as possible. And by that, I don't just mean in terms of the diversity of human perspectives, but also seeing the world through non-human eyes, or whatever the parallel of that would be, which is a huge part of our thought and is germinating from the beginning, in the beginning of our practice. Even in thinking about synthetic, things like robots, for example, we're just interested in how we haptically experience the world through different types of mechanical confabulations or productions that she's creating. There's just the real interest from the beginning in decentering herself from the object that she's investing. So that's how I understand it.
I think that's very well said. I think you pulled a lot of the different threads that inform this concept of undisciplinarity. I would add that she's somebody that I see as kind of boundary or boundless, that she, first and foremost, was really motivated by social issues, and what she viewed as collective issues. She thought about the collective often, or that was a motivating factor. And so taking social issues into whatever realm necessary. She was very influenced by her collaborators and friends from Critical Art Ensemble, and they have a slogan that they would use by any means necessary, or by any media, necessary media, like interdisciplinary or intermedia type of work, new media, if you will. And so I see that definitely showing up in her work. She would approach a social issue and use any media necessary to address her concerns or her vision. And in that sense, it was very undefined by a certain discipline, undisciplinary in that way.
Yeah, and I would say, pointed out to the tensions, right? The idea of also the study group is to really help us as curators of contemporary art. We are also very into one discipline, right? Like the contemporary way of curating. And for me, it was always kind of like trying to push my curatorial practice out of the regular curating, approaching an artist, that narrative. So I think her practice really helped me on that, and for me that's why it was very important to have these other voices that will come. Like we have a journalist, we have an educator in the group, and they will come with these other ideas. And Beatriz really connected also this disciplinary with the amateur science. So also like being an amateur also is very important to like address it, because it's like learning since the beginning and then bringing your own knowledge that you probably don't recognize into a specific discipline or into a specific, I did a master program, but what I didn't learn, what I learned outside is more academic and more formal disciplines. So for me, this idea of amateur, I will always say that I was, and really I was an amateur on her practice. I knew very little. I was able to interview her when I was in Mexico City in 2011, and it was just through an email, because I get to see her videos, dying for the other, and then write to her and have like a short conversation with her. But I never was like an expertise on her. I think now I know about her. I won't call me an expertise. I'm still learning. But I think the disciplinary is also, for me, pushing everybody out from their own discipline and expertise and try to learn from another perspectives of how you were thinking. And even working with the pigeons and working with Bob Matsuyama, the pigeon fancier, the original pigeon fancier that she worked with, it's been a whole experience to learn about these animals, right? And then also that exists a whole practice to take care of these pigeons. So there's a lot out there in the own discipline.
Well, I think, thank you for tying it, because I think it's important to think about research as part of creative practice, whether it be artistic or even as part of curatorial work. We think of research and we think it's technical or it's something very scholarly, but it is part of the creative process. I like for us to always come back to that. But I like that you introduced the idea of the public and the public amateur. Anna, because you're sort of like the expert on that a little bit, and I'm a little bit missing about the performative aspect of the work. So can you explain to us a little bit about the terms, but also the role of the public and how, especially for Beatriz, what was important for her, that the public was part of the process too. The research, but also the experience.
Yeah, so I would say going back to what I mentioned earlier in terms of her kind of conceptual practice of being very socially motivated and thinking about the collective. For her, the way the media or the way that she presented a work such as Pigeon Blog, I think is such a fantastic example. It's really informed by the public itself and the way that they maybe are able to be impacted by the work, right? So in Pigeon Blog, she works and collaborates with pigeons and creates with her students air pollution sensor backpacks that pigeons wear. But this to say that obviously she's collaborating with scientists, air pollution researchers, Daniela, the pigeon fancier himself, and lots of other folks. But she takes this concept of air pollution and the social kind of impact, social political impact it has on people, as well as, of course, its health impact very directly, and uses this spectacular way of presenting the social issue by flying these pigeons and live blogging during an era in the early 2000s when live blogging was something that was new, and she saw in that a political opportunity to be able to use certain platforms, certain media, and certain ways of presenting something to be able to share this collectively and to impact an audience in ways of that art can only impact an audience. That art can be a lens or a way to change or impact somebody's perspectives, change somebody's mind, and educate or inform, raise awareness. And in that, it goes back to this idea of the public amateur and this idea of publicly allowing yourself as an artist or as a researcher person in the world that is so scripted into working under certain disciplines or performing ideas of mastery or knowledge, to be able to publicly be an amateur, essentially be kind of bad at something publicly, to be able to learn in public, that was very motivating to her practice, to her collaborators' practice, and that's what her work intended to do, was to publicly take a stab at something, and in that process, be able to learn something yourself, but also educate the public in that process. I would say education is always kind of underlying every aspect of the work she would present, and you see that very much in the performance work that she did with Critical Art Ensemble, Gentera, for example, it being a makeshift, make-believe science lab, as we have here in our installation. But the intent behind the Gentera installation and performance is to educate the public about the new science of transgenics and microbiology and this kind of elementary school level science knowledge that most of us actually probably can't recall or don't actually practice, don't have access to it either. And so in that sense, it's allowing the public to re-engage with knowledge in a different way, in a way, again, that I think art can only do, and impact knowledge, impact minds in that way.
No.
That's it. Thank you so much. And we've been talking about collective learning as important for the project, but also for the business practice. But what about collective writing? Because in a way, that's how the book has been put together, and sort of part of the learning process. And maybe Daniela, can you talk a little bit about the structure? And also, as a reader of the catalog, I was very impressed because I don't know, when you see or just I don't know, as an insider knowing that a lot of the essays were written by people who knew her firsthand, and I was kind of expecting a Rashomon kind of situation where people would tell, like either either the same story in different ways or different versions of the same story. And no, it's actually very cohesive, and I'm really impressed by that. But so I see it as a piece of collective writing because of that. So can you talk a little bit about the structure of putting it together, of editing the book that way?
Yeah, it was like, we, as I say, we wanted to collaborate with her own collaborators, her mentors. So we did a specific selection of people that we invite them to write about her in their time and their relationship. So we have essays, long essays, with Steve Courts, with group singer, both artists that work with her, and it was like, for example, this process of collective writing. I would share this anecdote with Steve Courts. We have a lot of back and forth because we really want him to talk about like the historical moment and do a more deep analysis on that. And he was like, no, I want to talk about my vision of my collaboration with Beatriz. And we're like, yes, but could you include this other part, And there was, so we arrived to a middle point, and it was very important. But I think, those voices were also framing the publication. And, we wanted the book also have text of Beatriz written by her, so we wanted to be in conversation with her. Because, we have been in conversation with her, with the study group, reading, reflecting. So I think that every author was in conversation with her in a different way. Robert Neidefer, we invite him to do like the more introductory, because he was the one that spent more years with her during her practice. We also have, I'm looking into it. We also invite Lana Lynn, for example. She's an artist that she didn't knew her, and she also had cancer and has been working around these issues in her own art. So we wanted an artist that was not connected personally, but like connected to the themes in a different moment. So she was able to kind of like also have a conversation with her. So that's like kind of like the structure of the essays. And then we have a section called In Dialogue, that's when we include the text of Beatriz, that some of them were co-written, co-authored, with critical art ensemble, for example. And then we have a piece with Donna Haraway that is like a correspondence, an email correspondence. And this also the person that helped us to connect with Donna Haraway, because she is retired now. She has a lot of. It's very difficult for her to write a new essay for days, and also it was difficult because she was her mentor. So she accepted to publish a whole correspondence about the interspecies reflection that both of them they were doing, while Beatriz was training her dog to be a companion, because she knew that she was eventually with the cancer she would need her. So there's like a whole conversation that includes like that personal, but also like that interspecies. So it's, to me, this is undisciplinary in a way that we have Donna Haraway making funny things and even having memes photos there. So then we also we wanted to include an interview that Anna and I did with Dr. Robert Schneider, who was the last doctor that treated her, because she collaborated with him. He has a lab of breast cancer. He's been doing research for many years in NYU, and some of the scenes of the mice in the lab, in Dying for the Other in the back of the room, she did it in his lab, so she allowed her to. So we knew there was a collaboration there, and so that was very important for us. And that interview is really really important because he talks about him being a scientist collaborating with an artist, and also, of course, he talks about the experimental treatments and why she also called this video "Dying for the Other." You know, like she was offering herself as an experiment too. So that was like also a conversation that we include, and then we include a illustrated survey of the artworks because we want to give people that important understanding of her whole practice. And then we have a section of chronology because also that was very, very important, the chronological aspect to show what was happening in that moment, right? Because there's like the FBI case with the Steve Courts, and then really talking about 9/11. I think it was very important for us to bring up the DIY movement happening in that time and how is that reflected and almost impossible now to be DIY. So that chronology also includes her life, so you can learn about her travels to India and like also to Latin America, to different places. And then we have a section of reflections that they are like short texts that we ask to specific collaborators that work with her to give us just like a little personal glimpse of her life and of her work. And I would just say that personally, also for me, I have like different people working with me in my writing, and I have a whole system to like work together and give us each other feedback, but also there was a lot of dialogue in the essays to be produced. And Nora Waldo that is here, she accompanied me very close into my writing because I really want to have another voice that wasn't, I mean, I have all these amazing voices, but we were all inside. And yes, so I'm like, now I can hear myself. That was very important to me to have a collaborator. She was my professor, kind of like bringing back this network and have this other voice that can like dialogue with me and can be like, well, this kind of sound, you're assuming too much things, you know, like this process was very important for me. And I think, even you help us with like feedback, reading, and like, so we really have a lot of voices around this book. And that was like crucial, and I think it's, as you say, it's inserted here, you can feel it. Yes.
Thank you so much. I would like Andrew to respond to that, just because I feel like you're the expert in sort of public learning, and I would like to get your perspective a little bit on the structure of the book, and especially because you were part of the study groups and the curatorial advisor, like what was something that came out of the collective learning process that you can see in the exhibition and in the book? And after that, I would like Ana to talk to us more specifically about the design process of the book and, you know, like the colors, the aesthetic identity of the book and how that ties back to the same concepts of collectivity.
You should mention the screening of Lana's artwork in the study group. Yeah.
Okay. I'll try. I actually have a couple things that I wanted to respond to that all I think kind of tying together. The first one would be the mention of the cost of life film that Daniela just brought up. It is a bit tragic in some respects that film, which was one of the last final pieces that Beatriz made, I think really captures the core of who Beatriz da Costa is as an artist, and thinking about this topic of decentering oneself. The fact that the artist collaborated quite literally with the person who was their caretaker, their doctor, toward the final months of their life, underscores this interest in collaboration. But this is a piece that is the most personal that Da Costa ever made. She's quite literally the subject of it. And even in that context, she decenters herself by also making these lab rats, these lab mice, also the subject of the film. And it's while I think naturally we would, because we would identify with Beatriz da Costa isn't the subject of that film so much as the entire apparatus around science is the subject of that film. I mean, the subtext of that piece is that on the one hand, technology and technological advancements are allowing, for the treatment of cancer, but it's because of the same technological and scientific progress that we have, a preponderance of cancer in the world. And so there's, again, to sort of return to this idea of looking at something multidimensionally, to see it holistically through multiple perspectives at the same time. Over the course of this entire exhibition, from the development stage to the execution, that's been, I think, a guiding principle that Daniela and I have undertaken throughout from the get-go and through it. And thinking about a personal anecdote of one of the ways of having that opportunity to be in a collective study group in which we looked at the material from different perspectives, whether they be disciplinary differences. For example, we had scientists in this research group, we had people who were educators, folks who just wanted to participate in the production of exhibition. One personal anecdote I have that changed my perspective of how I thought about the politics of Da Costa's work, which could have only happened because of the insights that were brought to the table by someone who was doing public health research, was my engagement with a woman by the name of Bhavna Shamsundar, who participated in some of the public programming that we had done for the study group. And something that Bhavna had gone into great length about was the shortcomings of research into the impact of emissions levels in California because of the outdated system, which Da Costa herself wrote about, of how we measure that. So for those of you who don't know, emissions in Southern California are measured by these static, basically towers that collect samples. And so the detail and the accuracy by which we measure emission levels in Southern California is very much hampered by the fact that these towers are in a fixed geographic location. And gases don't move that way. Gases are dynamic. And so you could have different pockets with much higher concentrations of emissions than others. And it doesn't surprise one to learn that oftentimes these high concentration areas are low-income neighborhoods. And the reason for that is quite sinister. It's because a lot of the existing oil refineries that still exist in Southern California are located in high concentrations in these low-income areas. And oftentimes they're concealed. You wouldn't know they even exist. So a lot of things that Da Costa writes about in her writing is the benefit of having a sort of mobile fleet of researchers, not human researchers, who are doing these the oxygen samples. But there's also a radical politics to it that didn't occur to me until I really sort of did this deep dive into the politics of petroleum and oil refineries, is that something that a pigeon can do, that a tower can do, is it can actually infiltrate these sites that are being secluded from the public. And so there's a radical edge to the work that I think that she always underplayed because she had to get funding for it, which is really interesting and changed my perspective on the artist. And that could not have happened had I not been, working with people who are coming to this topic with a different set of background. So, maybe I'll leave out the book.
After Anna talks to us about the publication, we will open for questions from the public.
So smart, Andrew. Always insightful. Yes, so our publication was really a labor of love collectively. We worked with our designer, Sid Dueñas, who also was our
partially our exhibition designer. Our exhibition designer is Kim Somfe, but Kim and Sid collaborated a lot in terms of the presentation of the exhibition. But Sid came up with our exhibition identity, and it started with thinking about this idea that Selene actually brought up in terms of the project, which is thinking about how it mirrors Beatriz's practice in life. So we're thinking a lot about mirroring reflective surfaces and the pigeons actually themselves. You can probably see how a lot of our key colors come from the pigeons, the purples, the teals, what else? The greens, orange, the very beautiful orange eye that a pigeon has. I've personally gained a lot of love for pigeons through this project. And so we're thinking about those details in the work and how to abstract or refract them away from the source, which is how we end up with these beautiful images that are abstract fields of color, which actually comes directly from that image of that banner of Pigeon Blog. It's one of the iconic images of the project when she unveiled it in San Jose in the clock tower for ICEA in 2006. And so from there, we took that image and kind of changed it and modified it in different ways. Another aspect of the design is thinking about how she could be embedded into it. Sid brilliantly took her signature and began to make fields with the pockets of the signature from the way that she would write her name, and we have that actually on our title wall is her signature in a kind of abstracted way. Those fields of geometric shapes that basically Sid was creating, he would use also to kind of layer over these other abstracted images that he took from this beginning image.
I just also want to add that there's like tons of different fonts that he used to try to play this undisciplinary aspect. So there's a lot of like fonts changing towards the book, and of course the margin. He wanted to put it very close to the edge, and he was like, we're gonna have problems with the printer. We did, but we were able to make it, to push even their boundaries too. Just want to say that, and just one more thing, in the process of collective writing, and I forgot to mention, but our copy editor, Tony Carfello, was like key for actually being able to bring together all this text. Which he couldn't come with. Tony.
Thank you. We can definitely see that, and thank you, Andrew, for that. Especially the interspecies, like how you connect the radicality of the work to the interspecies collaboration. That I know, it's like a term that is really weird, but it's really, you'll see it in one of her early works with the cockroaches too, like how, the collaboration with animals is because they're able to infiltrate these things, and even the rats, they're experiencing something first through experiments that then it's for human experimentation. So with that, I would like to thank you for all the reflections and open up for questions from the public. And remember that we have the book for sale in the back with Skylight Books. So I really invite you to look over the catalog. We have a question in the back.
Thank you so much. You guys have really articulated really complex ideology and I think represented Beatriz's philosophy very well. So well done. I hope that you sign some of the books because I think the collaborative aspect and your signatures would be really welcomed from us regular folks. 2 questions. I recently saw Yoko Ono's Pieces Power at the Tate Modern this summer. and I was heavily moved by such a large exhibit of her work, and I found there some parallels in this sort of like democracy of art and how art shouldn't be bound by gallery walls, and then yet you're challenged by putting it in the gallery, and I think that you've done a really good job of like trying to break those gallery walls and this sort of elitism of art. And I think Yoko Ono has been doing over the decades, been doing that even though public opinion has been very against her for most of those decades. And I felt like for the first time in my life, I got her art, this past exhibit, because I'm now of her age, and before I was a child, and now I'm a middle-aged woman. So now I'm seeing her in her art as opposed to being told how her art is to be perceived. And I think there's something similar with Beatriz da Costa's work, where you perceive her work through commentary of people in the industry. So it's very hard to have your own opinion of it because you're reading about it or reviewing it from an intellectual elite person. And I'm intrigued to read the book because it seems like you're really conscious of that in the collaboration of the publication. So my question is, as publishers, curators, artists yourselves, how do you stay true to that when challenged to show an artist who no longer is in life form, and you're talking about social, ethical issues which are still controversial in the base? How do you hold yourself true, and what is your measure of that? And then the second question is, who is Shani?
Oh, yes, thanks. Thank you. That's a good question. Yeah, that was like the big question since the beginning, right? Constantly, like how to produce an exhibition and all this research, but close to the, I don't know if I would call it the truth, but like close to how she sees her practice and how others sees her practice and how different people engage it. And again, I think it was, for me, having the support of all these people around it, that was like the way that will take me into like, to not have to misinterpret, but also allow ourselves to misinterpret, because that's what she was offering in her, this idea of undisciplinary. But yeah, it definitely was like a question that constantly we wanted to ask if that was correct, or I don't know if it's correct because I feel like but like if we are presenting, we wanted to present all these voices and all these forms that we knew that exist in different ways. Like even having newspapers or like the scientists magazines that interpret wrongly her work, or like even learning that there's some company in England that steal her project Pigeon Blog to make it, to sell it basically. Yeah. There's Pigeon Patrol, they're fake. So I think it's kind of like really presenting the result of different approaches rather than just one and unique. And Shani is the nickname of Beatriz da Costa. So, and that was, for example, a big challenge for me, because when we will interview people, they were like, oh, Shani, and we will be Beatriz, and they will be like, oh, this is so weird, but Shani, Shani is the friend, but also a colleague of many people. And just to share the anecdote is that Shani is is in Goa language, because her family was from Goa, India, as Shani.
Thank you.
Can you talk about the public programming where we get out of the white cube?
Yes. Yeah, that's also, thank you, very important of this undisciplinary as curators, as like engaging only with our people. We want to also engage with other audiences. So part of the program, that is her practice, activating, we're going to have 2 activations, one in Crenshaw Dairy Mart in Inglewood, connecting with what Andrew was saying of like, we want to really connect with communities that racially has been affected their environment or has not been addressed by the government. So it's like a very autonomous way of collecting data. We're also going to have a cooking workshop and gardening workshop related with the Cost of Life series. And then Gentara performance is going to happen. So that's also another aspect, yeah.
And the launch here.
Yes.
Yeah, on November 16th, yeah, we have the second launch of the pigeons, and yeah, so all of the public programs have a component of interactivity. So the public is not only kind of like witness, but they're participating in some way or another in all of these programs. So that's sort of to bring back to the question of like going outside of the white cube. Yeah, like they're going to be, the pigeon blog here is going to be outside, and the pine grove and next to the Hollyhock House. But it's more about this idea of bringing the public to be part of the results. Yeah, so any other questions from the public? Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, please join us here in the back to see the books. Daniela will sign the books for you. And we also have some activities outside with coloring and button making. So yeah, thank you for joining us. We're very grateful for your attention. And you have the people here, so please feel free to ask them more questions one-on-one. Thank you.